This is final zone. This is final zone.
Final moments, 5 people left. Vino has height, Tayson all the way in the middle. Those are the two eyes, the two names you have to be focusing on right now. Tayson is literally in a world of hurt, but at the same time finds 2. That could be the difference. It'll have to be Vino going for the win right now in order to catch up. He's going for Erkin as well. If he gets 3, that could be it. He's moving forward, forcing the placement. Tayson on all walls, but he sees everything through. Finds it. A big matchup. Tayson takes them all. No.
Let's go, Vino. Let's go, bro. Wait. There's no way that's Tayson. Oh.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter. He had low kills. Vino, you just won $120,000, by the way.
Would you believe me if I said that that clip that I just showed you of Veno versus Tayson in the final 1v1 was now 4 years old? And that was the last time we ever had a major solo Fortnite tournament. And the crazy thing is, you can probably remember that exact 1v1 like it just happened yesterday, with Veno missing his pump versus Tayson, who's already won a solo FNCS at that point in time. Or what about this even older clip right here of Tayson playing? This is from 5 years ago, and you can probably remember this next move that Tayson pulls off in a second like it just happened, with this crazy side jump shard shot, taking the high ground and setting himself up to win his first ever FNCS. Now the reason I'm showing these tournaments from 4 and 5 years ago is not just to live in the past, but to explain that solos in Fortnite create highly memorable moments that almost every single player who watches the tournament will remember going into the future. And not just that, these tournaments create the future stars of Fortnite. Let me explain how. Now, one of the key reasons why solos are so important for the health of Fortnite, and the reason why I think Fortnite is currently dying without them, is because they allow players to prove themselves without having teammates. And I'm sure since we swapped back to trios, you guys know and understand the struggle of not being able to find good teammates. And Veno going into the All-Stars was no different than you guys struggling to get teammates now. He'd only ever qualified for one FNCS Grand Final with Paddy and Knifel, where they placed 20th. And the main reason they placed so badly is because they couldn't even secure a drop spot in the actual finals. Because of this bad placement, Veno wasn't even invited to the solo all-star finals, which was an invite tournament. However, Fortnite decided to open up 20 spots on each region where any player, regardless of their skill, could try to qualify. And because there was 20 spots open on every region, that led to millions of players across the world queuing up and trying to qualify for this tournament with millions of dollars on the line. There was absolutely no requirements except you had to be over the age of 13, and that led to so many people queuing up and a massive amount of competition and interest in the overall tournament. Nowadays, Fortnite blocks you from queuing up the FNCS rounds unless you're one of the few players inside Division 2, which is absolutely crazy compared to where we were a few years ago. Veno placed very well in the opening rounds of the solo open qualifiers, placing second as well as inside the top 10, and secured himself in the finals. The favourites for the tournament were still established big names like Cammy, Thomas HD, and Tayson, who ended up winning, of course. However, these upstart players who qualified through the opens on average got a better placement than all of the players who had already qualified just from being invited from grand finals. This shift from just inviting players who had already competed and done well in the past to open competition led to so much interest in this tournament, as well as Veno finally not getting held back by his teammates, was able to 10x his earnings in this single one event because, of course, it was all down to his own skill. Now, the next reason why Fortnite solos are so important is because they get so many viewers every single time there is a tournament. Taking a look back at this World Cup solo finals, this one video from Booga has 30 million views, which is way more than any of the other duo videos that got posted from the same tournament the day before. And this exact same thing happens every single time there is a solo cash cup that people can play that is opened. There is always way more people playing the solo cash cup opens than any other type of game mode that is not solos. It's just because it's so much more accessible, and this leads to way more people watching the finals as well and actually watching the tournament, which is very good for the health of the game. Now, the best way to figure out how many players are interested in competitive Fortnite is by taking a look at the ranked battle royale playlist count. This is because anybody who is playing ranked battle royale is normally going to be playing the tournaments that happen and probably also going to be watching the tournaments when they're live as well. As you can see, we had a massive spike back when Chapter 2 was re-released in November of last year. So many people playing the game, having fun, enjoying it, and this wasn't just because of the fun meta and the nostalgia factor, which definitely definitely played a part. It was because we were jam-packed with tournaments. This season alone had over 15 tournaments for average players to queue up that were not locked and actually hard to qualify for. Then at the start of 2025, when I wanted to start making this video, Fortnite made a big change. They swapped the solo cash cups from being opens where the top 10,000 or so players could qualify for the finals and get a chance of earning, to now top 600. This was done to primarily counter cheaters as well as to give pros a bit more of an incentive to actually play and try hard in these cups. However, the exact opposite happened. Because now only the top 25 players earned, a lot less people were playing, as well as a lot more cheaters were earning every single week. There were of course some spikes as new seasons got released, but as you can see, these spikes were nowhere compared to how many people were playing ranked in the past. And this led to a continuous bleeding of the amount of people playing Fortnite tournaments throughout this entire time period. There was just no interest in the game. The worst was yet to come though. In May earlier this year, on May 4th, they dropped a brand new Star Wars season. This was a pretty fun season, a bit of controversy around it. However, there was no solo tournaments. A whole month with no solo tournaments, and look what happened to the average player count. Absolutely in the bin, nobody was interested. Sub 20,000 average on multiple times. Now, even as we get back to a more fun season that a lot of people are enjoying, which is of course the superhero season we're in right now, there is still nobody playing ranked because there is no tournaments. Me and Resub are in Division 2 this season, which we're lucky enough to qualify for, which gives us access to even more tournaments than most players. However, there was only 3 cups for us to play. Compare that to just earlier in November of last year, there was over 15 tournaments any player could queue up that were a lot more accessible, and that led to much more people playing and engaging in these tournaments. Now we've only got 3 cups, and viewership as well as player counts are in the bin. Now the final reason I think solos are so important for Fortnite competitive, and the reason why Fortnite competitive is sort of dying off at the moment, is because they are a key early stage of the ecosystem, not just in players watching Fortnite, but also of the players themselves developing and improving. Take a look at the background player in this clip right here, Prism. Prism had flat $0 despite playing competitive for multiple years. Then he started improving and placing in solo victory cash cups, and from those victory cash cups he was able to go ahead and earn multiple times. He even won one of the solo cash cup final rounds, which is what we're watching right here. From that, he was able to improve his teammates and get better players to play with. That allowed him to qualify for his first ever FNCS Grand Finals, and through even more hard work, continued improvements in solos, he upgraded his PC from the earnings he got from all those tournaments, and he finally actually made it to the global championships this past year, which is an absolute monumental achievement. In 2 years, going from having $0 earned to placing in solos, getting better teammates, and finally qualifying for the global championships is absolutely crazy. So in the background right here, we have got Jake Buka, who has won over 50 solo cash cup final games, allowing himself to earn over $5,000. And Jake Buka at the start, before he ever got earnings, was just a very average player. He had $0 earned, he couldn't find teammates, he also was playing on a pretty bad setup, and he never even qualified for an FNCS Grand Final. Since then, he's obviously able to qualify for multiple FNCS Grand Finals, get much better teammates, being able to upgrade his setup and upgrade his PC, and potentially even go on to make a living from Fortnite in the future. And that was just done through victory cash cups. And he's not just an outlier example. Every single week, whenever there is a solo cash cup on, hundreds of players would get their first ever earnings, and they would constantly DM me. I'll leave some of them on the screen, but I would get so many DMs from players who either watched my videos on YouTube, maybe had the solos masterclass if they were lucky enough to get it, or they had just gone ahead and got their first earnings from grinding as much as possible. So what does it mean for those average players that grind and get their first earnings? Well, first of all, it allows them to upgrade their setup, which I think is a very, very important part of solos. They can go ahead and upgrade their setup, get a better PC, get better mouse and keyboard, maybe upgrade their controller. There's so many different things that winning a solo cash cup can give to a player that they're never ever going to get from anywhere else. There's also the big aspect of getting better teammates, and this is something that is completely overlooked because a lot of people who have already earned in solos have already got access to better teammates. However, there is hundreds of thousands of players out there who are capable of doing much better in tournaments, but they never have an opportunity to do so because they can't find decent teammates. If you're somebody sitting with low PR, zero earnings, it's almost impossible to actually get teammates in the current state of Fortnite unless you're in a friend group with pretty good players who know you for your skill. You cannot prove yourself without solos. Now, the final reason that I think the ecosystem of Fortnite is sort of getting hindered by no solos is there's so many players who just don't have an incentive to play competitive at the moment. Of course, like I said earlier, nobody's playing ranked, nobody is actually playing the regular tournaments that are on because of the reduced player counts that we've got, as well as nobody is grinding the game. The amount of people putting time into Fortnite is so much more reduced, and that's just going to get worse and worse worse when there's no solo tournaments on. Even for players who aren't able to earn from solo cash cups, which of course is the vast majority of players, there are so many players who queue up every single week, these players still enjoy the aspect of competing. They still watch competitive after they compete, and they support the big streamers and other players trying to make a living from Fortnite. When you kill off the very initial thing that gets people interested in competitive Fortnite, which is normally solo cash cups, you completely hinder the ability for the rest of the ecosystem to thrive. There's no reason that now, since we've got no solo cash cups on, there's way less players playing in the FNCS open rounds that happen. There's way less people watching the final rounds. There's also way less people watching competitive Fortnite on YouTube. As soon as you take away that building block of interest in competitive Fortnite, which solos often are, that is when you kill the rest of the thing. And you can sort of see at the moment, Fortnite is prioritizing, you know, creative maps to Squid Game maps, which I think is all fine and well. However, that's never ever going to lead to people having a long-lasting interest in competitive Fortnite, because those modes are inherently, you know, uncompetitive. Even in the recent event with Aussie Antics and Peterbot, the FNCS Invitational, the Reload Pro-Am, there was so many people that would have loved an opportunity to qualify for that. Just some open qualifiers to maybe give a slot to a pro that didn't get invited. You can keep the same content creators, just have a couple open slots for pros who could qualify. But Fortnite, because they're moving away from open tournaments and solo qualifiers and other things like that, there has just been a complete lack of, you know, interest from people to play the game. All right, that is all for today's video, guys. If you could please leave a like. I actually spent ages sort of researching and making this video for you guys, and I want Fortnite Competitive to see this and realize that they can change it. They can fix the ecosystem that is killing Fortnite very slowly. All Fortnite really needs to do is to add back some type of solo cash cup, ideally a solo victory cash cup, where loads of people can play and earn and get hyped about actually playing competitive again. Doesn't matter what the meta, the mode, the map is. All that matters is that people have the opportunity to prove themselves through solos. And what would be really perfect is if we got a big massive type LAN event. We haven't had a big major in Fortnite for solos for 4 years now. Now they're capable of putting on insanely good, you know, high quality LAN experiences like the Pro-Am we just had, like Global Championships this past year. If they put on one of those for solos, Fortnite would be one of the most popular esports, and so many people would get into competitive because they've realized that they can finally prove themselves. So please leave a like. Hopefully we can get the scene around a little bit by people who, you know, want to actually make competitive better. And all Epic really needs to do, add back some solo cash cups and try to host a major or a LAN or something like that that will get people hyped throughout solos once again. And I believe Fortnite Competitive will be in a very good way for years to come.